So the question tells us to calculate. That's important as you pay attention to the verb. It's not a discussion question in this case. Now, I know this sounds very simple, but guys, please remember when you're answering any question, so I'm doing this, get it into the habit of it for all the exams and so on, please always clearly indicate at the top of the page the question number. I know it sounds like I'm saying something to a first year student when I say it, you might think that, but the majority of students, or not a majority, a lot of students, when you mark papers, they don't put the question numbers on top, so it makes it difficult for the examiners to even see which question is being answered. Make it easy, guys. You're professional. Question 1. We must always put down the headings. That's how you get your presentation marks. The headings will be description, calculation, / explanation, and then we will have to have a rands column. Now you can either have a rands column like that, or you can have an output tax and an input tax column. I prefer to, and it's just my personal preference, to have a rands column and to have a separate heading over here for output tax. And then obviously further down, or even the next page if you need to, input tax. So let's go and look at our question. Let's start all the way at the top. Remember, we have to do this now for February. And our very first one that we start with is the rental income for the flats, warehouses and offices. And you'll remember that this amount that we see over there, the cash receipts, is different from the amount that was invoiced. We have to use the invoiced amounts. So we start with the rentals for the flats, warehouses and offices. So rentals, flats, warehouses and our offices. So the flats are exempt residential accommodation. You have to give your explanation. Remember, you can't just say zero rated. That's incorrect. You can't just say no VAT. You have to call it correctly. It is residential accommodation. You need to give explanations, guys. Some questions, sometimes you'll see there will be extra marks for giving the references to the Act. If you don't know the references to the Act, it's not the end of the world. You should still get your majority of your marks for answering correctly. It's only specifically when they ask you of reference to the Act. But I want you to practice when you're practicing to get into it, because after you've written down residential accommodation section 12G 3 times, you'll know it's section 12G. So practice with the section numbers. It helps you just get more used to the Act, so when you get into the exam you can find things a little bit better. The more you work with the Act, the more familiar it will become. It's not a natural thing that you'll just pick up. You have to spend time with it. Right, then we have the warehouses and the offices. So these are amounts excluding VAT, important. So 2807018. It's an amount excluding VAT, so the VAT is 15%. Do we say times 75%? No, remember, VAT is always at 100%, except for indemnity awards and fringe benefits. And the logic behind this is, it's very logic though also. The warehouse, the commercial, when I invoice you for using my warehouse, I'm only invoicing you for using a commercial thing, so it's 100% commercial. That is the reason for it. Then the offices, 4385965. 4385965. Both of these times 15%. Okay, there we go. So first one done. Very simple. Tick, tick, tick. Right, then we have the sale of these assets. Okay, so this one's a little bit more complicated now. Remember, computer, reception desk, microwave, and the Toyota Corolla. So remember what happened here? These are the assets that were destroyed. So the first one is the computer. Now, this computer, guys, important. The computer is being sold for 15,000 rands. That is the cash amount. So let's start with the sale of the computer. So sale of assets. So important, I want you to see we are looking at output tax, remember? So the sale of this computer. Because the amounts include VAT, remember? So 15 over 115. Now, what is important about this computer? We are calculating it basically at 100%, remember? Because all output tax is at 100%. But we could only claim 75% input tax when it was purchased. So now we can claim additional under section 16(3)(h). So we go to our input tax section. To sale of assets, section 16(3)(h). Computer is the first one. Now, what is important again for you to remember? This was at a time when the VAT was 14%. So you can't claim more input tax than what was calculated at 14%. So we will calculate this on the lower of. So usually we say the lower of the cost, including VAT, or the open market value. So I'm just showing you what we're doing differently now. The reason why we're not going to do that is because the VAT was 14% in the cost, and the open market value of this asset today, the 15,000 has VAT at 15%. You have to compare two things, the equal things. You can't compare a 15% and a 14% amount. So you have to compare either both amounts at the same VAT rate or both amounts excluding VAT. So I'm going to suggest that we compare it excluding VAT. So we'll say the cost x VAT, which was 49,900 times 100 over 114, remember, because it was 14% VAT. Or the open market value is the amount including VAT. Remember, we're not going to do that. So we're going to say the market value x VAT. And that is our 15,000 selling price times 100 over 115. So this is a little bit of a trick to be on the lookout for. Something that has now happened because of the VAT rate. So which of those two amounts is the lower? It's the 13,044. So thus 13,044 times 14%. Important for you to see. Remember, that's the VAT that was claimed. And we claimed 75% originally. Now we can claim our remaining 25%. Because remember, 25% of the business is exempt. So we can now claim that remaining portion. That, I would say, is a trick to be on the lookout for, especially this year, now that there's been a VAT rate change. Then the reception desk of 20,000. Remember, the reception desk, same story, but it makes it a little bit easier here because here the VAT when we purchased it was also 15%. So let's do the reception desk. This one should be a little bit easier. So we go back to our output tax. Should you see our output tax? We have our reception desk that is being sold. The reception desk was sold for 20,000 rands. So 2609. Then we have to go to our input tax section. So now we can claim additional input tax on this reception desk under section 16.3H as well, because we only claimed 75% originally. But now, guys, we say, as the Act says, lower off the cost, including VAT, and the open market value. The open market value was this 20,000 rands, and the cost, including VAT, they tell you was 25,000 rands. So that's the lower of the two, 20,000 times 15 over 115 times 25%. So 652. Then we sell the microwave and the Toyota Corolla, and in both of those situations, can you remember what we said? Input tax was denied when it was purchased, so therefore there will be no output tax. So we have to go and show this and just explain this. So we go back to our output tax. So here we have our microwave. Input tax was denied when purchased, thus no output tax. And this is from section 8.14, but even more so section 10.21 in this case. Let's say it's null. Then we have the Toyota Corolla. It's basically the same story. Input tax was denied, thus no output tax. And that you will find specifically basically discussed in section 8.14. So that's all our assets done. Then we have this interest received of 19,000. Very simple. It's an exempt financial service, so we just need to indicate that. So this is under our output tax. Interest received. You have to say exempt and explain why. Financial service. And then the dividends received, 80,000, same story, also financial service. Right, and in both these cases, guys, section 12A tells us financial services are exempt. Okay, so now we go to our cash payment side. We start with the bank charges. We could claim 75% of those bank charges. So input tax, make sure you see we are now looking at input tax. So here's our bank charges. $8,000. The amount is including VAT because it's our cash journal, and we can only claim 75% of that because we are a 75% VAT vendor. Okay. Then we have the canteen equipment and furniture. So this you'll remember were new things that were purchased for the staff canteen. So all of that we know is input tax denied. So canteen, you have to say input tax is denied and give the reason. It's entertainment. Right, and that's section 17 2A. Then we have the antique desk. Now remember what happens with the antique desk. See the amount here? This is the cash amount, 35,000 rands. And you'll remember with the antique desk that it was second-hand goods purchased from a non-vendor. So you can only claim the amounts which have been paid. So why is this important for you to know? It's important for you to see, usually you would claim it on that 105,000 rands or the earlier of invoice or payment. But now, because it is second-hand goods, you claim it only on the amount that was paid, which is 35,000 rands. So I'll explain and just put it down here, everything that is necessary. So the antique desk, this is what you would say when your solution. Claim a notional input tax as it is second-hand goods from a non-vendor. Claim on payment made. So 35,000, because that's the amount paid, times 15 over 115. So remember, this is section 16.3a, a big reference there. And because it's for our entire business, we can only claim 75% of that. Right, then we have our air conditioner repairs for the flats, warehouses and the offices. So again, here we have, it's split between our different businesses. So aircon repairs, flats, warehouses. So you can see we've got separate invoices. So the flats, guys, will be exempt because it is residential accommodation. Section 12C. The warehouses and the offices, different story. 35,000 and 20,000. Both those amounts you can claim the VAT on. And how much can you claim? You claim 100% because it is 100% for commercial property used. So I hope you can see and that you have not made the mistakes, that you know when to apportion it and when to claim 100%. So again, you have to ask yourself the question, what business am I using it for? Am I using it for 100% exempt business like the flats? Then it's 100% exempt. Am I using it 100% for the taxable businesses, which is the warehouse and offices, because then it's claimed 100%? Or am I using it for both? The antique desk is an example. It's being used for both the exempt and the residential business. So then I can only claim my percentage. Right, then we have the water and electricity, 70,000. So here's another example of that. The water and electricity, what business is it being used for? Is it being used 100% for my exempt business, 100% for my taxable business only, or is it being used for both? It's being used for both. So I can only claim the correct percentage. So basically the idea behind this is to have situations where you don't have separate invoices. Okay, then we have the bond payments, the capital and the interest. So remember, this is just for now. The bond capital, I was going to say already claimed. So the question tells us that, so there's nothing. And then the interest is important for you to just see it's an exempt financial service. So section 12A says there's nothing. Then we have the insurance payments, General, Canteen, Toyota Corolla and our Hilux. So here's our insurance. So we have General, Canteen, Toyota, Corolla, and the Hilux. Right. 15,000, 20,000, 4,000, and 6,000. So the Canteen, 15,000. Can we claim that? Yes. How much can, also General, sorry, how much can we claim with the General? We can only claim 75% because we're a 75% VAT vendor. The canteen is used for entertainment, but this is insurance. So we can claim on insurance. It's not entertainment, the insurance. Only claim 75%. Then we have the Toyota Corolla. Now this is a motor car, but again guys, we're looking at insurance here, not at the motor car itself. So yes, we can claim. Again 75% because it's used for the entire business. And then the Hilux. The Hilux, you'll remember, is a single cab, so it's not a motor car, but again, that doesn't matter. We're looking at insurance. We can claim the insurance. So 6,000 times 15 over 115. Okay, so that's it. Then we have the Hilux single cab. This is not a motor car, so we can claim it on the cost. 280,000 times 15 or 115 being used for the entire business, so 75%. Right, then the fuel for the vehicles. This is zero rated, section 11(1)(h). Then our consulting services. So remember, these are imported services. So only the exempt portion. So now, important, for services you have to remember, we only look at output tax. So we have our imported services. Which is 400,000. Because it is important, there was no VAT on it. And then you pay the 25%. And this is section 7(1)(c) tells us to calculate VAT. Okay, so now we get to the end of the question. You add up your total output tax. And guys, from an exam perspective, you add it up once. If your finger slips and you type something wrong, it doesn't matter. Don't spend time wasting it. You're not going to get a mark for it. Right, so whatever that amount is, XXX. Then we have your total input tax. So what I'm trying to say is, just add it up once. You can even do it roughly. You get marks for the principal. Don't spend time adding up and adding up and adding up, and every time because you stress you make a mistake, you're not going to get marks for it. You're going to waste your time. So once you've done the total there, you take the output tax, which is XXX. You take the input tax, which is Y, Y, Y. And the difference between that, if you have more output tax than input tax, so if that was 100 and the input tax is 80, it means you owe SARS 20 rands. If your output tax is 80 and your input tax is 100, it means SARS owes you 20 rands. Alright, and that is it then for question 1.